So this is a deep dive into youth motivational maps and understanding how we can motivate young people across the world. And Mark Turner, who heads up the youth motivational maps globally, is going to share his experiences and expertise on youth maps. So Mark, do you want to start by explaining to us why motivation is so important?
I thought it would be useful to just consider this question for a few moments, because much of my experience in talking to parents and indeed teachers has been that they actually have a lack of understanding of what motivation is and what it's about. And many of that goes back to the age of the people that we're talking about in terms of the parents and staff in schools. And they believe motivation to be the Tim Robbins walking on hot coals, the inspiring of individuals to doing things that they wouldn't normally do. And to some degree, that is important in terms of the confidence of the individual. But actually to ask the question, what is motivation? And really to understand that motivation is something that is embedded deep within us. If you like, it is not our consciousness, it is our subconscious. It is the thing that drives us into doing what we do. And if we can unlock what motivates an individual, then what we're actually getting into is their wants and their needs. We're beginning to understand what fulfills them as an individual. And of course, when we can meet the needs of an individual and they're feeling fulfilled, then their performance rises as a result of that. And so this is why motivation, if you like, is the third aspect of success. In order to be successful, we need to know where we're going, what we want to achieve. We need to have, in the second place, the ability or the skills and the knowledge to be able to achieve that. And then in the third, we've got to have the want to achieve it. And it's not, we cannot as adults create a want or a need in students by telling them they've got to do it or they need to do it or they want to do it. People don't change because we want them to. People only change because they want to or they need to. And so if we can unlock what it is that's motivating the individual, then we're empowering them to achieve what they need to achieve. But having said that, they've got to be aware of what it is they want to achieve and to be able to apply the prerequisite skills and knowledge to be able to achieve that. And I think it's important to understand, Carol, that in terms of motivation, there are two things that we are definitely not looking at. We are certainly not looking at a personality profile of an individual. If we think about the personality of an individual, that is what someone's like. We can see what they're like. And our personality is largely a genetic thing that is pre-encoded within us and grows and develops as we grow and develop. It tends not to change. It tends to be a fairly fixed thing. So the personality profile is the what about someone. It's what are they like? And we can see that. And it's a fairly fixed thing. Equally, motivation is not about strengths or weaknesses. And we can all do a strength or weakness profile. And again, this is a fairly fixed thing, because to achieve whatever it is we want to achieve, we tend to work to our strengths and avoid our weaknesses in order to achieve what it is we're seeking to do. So again, that's a fairly fixed thing. So if we have the personality, that is about the what of someone. Strengths and weaknesses are about the how of someone. And motivation is neither the what or the how, but it's the why of someone. And once we understand the why, and furthermore, students understand the why themselves, then we can begin to look at how we can channel that energy into achievement. And at the same time as channeling that energy into achievement, by understanding the motivational needs and wants of an individual, we can monitor their levels of fulfillment, and through that, monitor their well-being. I often think when I'm talking about this, many years ago, my wife decided, bless her, and here I say my wife decided, and being a good husband, she did decide, and I let her, that we were going to get a couple of kittens. And duly we did. And got a huge amount of fun out of watching these kittens chase around the room, attacking each other, bouncing over each other, running up the furniture, the curtains, etc., everything like that. And their level of energy was huge. And they were totally fulfilled in what they were doing. But if we boil that down, actually, they were learning to hunt, they were learning to fight, they were learning to survive. But they were doing what they wanted to do and what they needed to do. And out of that, they achieved a sense of well-being and fulfillment. Once we get that well-being and fulfillment, then we're permanently monitoring or helping the students to monitor their self-knowledge and awareness of what's important to them, why it's important, what their direction is, how they need to apply their skills and knowledge, and therefore their self-efficacy, which allows them to have self-respect, to have self-confidence, to have self-esteem, to know that they are important. And within that, there is a hidden message that actually students, the youth of today, whether 11 years old or whether 16 years old or whether 18 years old, has to start taking some responsibility for their own future. Because these are the young ones who are going to be in positions of authority in the future. And they are going to be creating a legacy for the next generation. So this self-knowledge and this self-efficacy is hugely important. And so the motivational maps, the youth motivational map, is basically an online profile that is in no way confrontational or judgmental. It is a self-perception profile. It takes about 10 minutes to do, 10, 15 minutes to do. And the essence of the motivational map is to identify what an individual's needs and wants are, and therefore to identify how strong those needs and wants are in the individual, and measure the degree to which they're currently being met. And if we know how much they're being met at this present moment in time, then we can put positive psychological interventions into place to help meet those needs. But these interventions have to be done in agreement and in consultation with the individual. They have to possess and to own what is happening, because if they don't, they're not going to buy into it. We need to bear in mind that for the young ones today, majoritively speaking, education is something that is done to them. It is not something that they're doing for themselves, and it's not something that they have control of. By placing education firmly within the motivational map, or their motivation firmly within education, it is something that they are doing for themselves. And that is where it becomes really powerful.
Thank you, Mark. Yeah. And
one of the differences there, if I may just, Carol, is that actually a motivational map is a starting point, not a finishing point.
Yes, and I think what you've created with the youth maps is a very simple language for the young people, as you say, to take control of their energy and what motivates them. And I know we've got people listening to this who are practitioners and who are familiar with the motivational maps, but there are some people where this is the first time that they'll be becoming aware of it. And what is offered with the youth motivational maps is, as Mark says, people go online and do an online assessment for 10-15 minutes. But what that creates is a report for the young person, but it also creates a report for the parent or the carer of the young person, and also one for a sponsor or a teacher. So we're talking here about the young person understanding their motivation, but equally having strategies for the parent to support the motivators of their child or young person, but also for a teacher or another sponsor or stakeholder can also add value. And Mark, what we're going to do in this session is benefit from your wisdom and experience over the many years of doing youth maps, of understanding the 9 motivators that can motivate a young person. And obviously people have different preferences around these, but Mark's going to talk about the 9 motivators.
Thank you, Carol. And if I may just pause on this slide for a moment. When our son or our daughter completes a motivational map, it's important that we understand that there is no right or there is no wrong about the outcome of the motivational map. The motivational map is a reflection of where we are at any given moment in time, and that our circumstances may create a change in what motivates us. And in saying that there's no right and there's no wrong, what we implicitly believe and understand within that is that we all have the ability to operate in any one of the 9 motivational areas that you see here. No one motivator is any more or any less important than one of the others, but for each individual, we will have different needs and wants, and that is why the profiles will be different for each individual. So whatever the results of the map, we can't be judgmental of that. It is a reflection of the circumstances at a given time for the individual. So whilst one motivator will come out as the top motivator for an individual, another will come out as their lowest or their 9th motivator. And just because this is their lowest or their 9th motivator, it doesn't mean that they don't do it, they won't do it, or they can't do it. It simply means, in the best of all possible worlds, they would rather not do this over extended periods of time if they can possibly help it. And to ask them to be spending all their time operating in the area of their lowest motivator is actually going to demotivate them, because it's not what they want or need to be doing. And so we just need to bear that in mind, that there's no order, there's no right, there's no wrong. It's a reflection of where each individual is at a given time. But at this time of home educating that we're looking at the moment, it really gives us the opportunity to look for the key to unlock the individual, to keep them engaged, to keep them fulfilled, and to prepare them for when schools and normal life, whatever that's going to look like when it starts again, to make sure that they're in a position and of a state of mind where they're able to pick up and run with the future. So what we're looking at here is each of the 9 motivators split into 3 groups or aspects of motivation. We have the relationship-based motivators, and these are very much based on the feelings. They're about emotional sensitivity. They're about social awareness, emotional awareness. The achievement-based motivators that I often refer to with children as the work-based motivators. And these are the ones about making things happen. These are the doing motivators, if you like, very much based in the present. And then we have the growth-based motivators. And often I refer to those with students as being the self-based motivators. These are the ones that are about the individual, the mindset, the thought processes, the beliefs, the attitudes, the understandings of the individuals. And so I'm going to pick on each of these in turn and just spend 4 or 5 minutes unpicking each and taking it a little bit further than the headlines that you see in front of you at the moment. And so the first of the motivators that I would like to talk about is one called the defender. It's one of the motivators that sits in the relationship-based aspect. And in essence, the needs of the defender are for security, stability, longevity, certainty, and clarity. In other words, what the defender needs is they need to know what we want them to do. They need to know when we want them to do it. They need to know how we want them to do it. They need to know what it's going to look like. And they will need to know how and when they have been successful. And interestingly, having mastered that, they then need to embed it. They want to do more of it. Now, one of the things with the defender, because they always want to do more of it, because it's good to get it right, and they like getting it right, we sometimes need to unsettle that and say, now is the time to move on. You've got that. Let's take it a little bit further. So incremental steps are really important for the defender. And they need to be able to ask a lot of questions. They need to be able to refer to someone about what they're doing in order to get it right. Because to them, if they get it wrong, they're going to upset someone, and they do not want to upset someone. One of the most difficult things for a student who has the defender in their profile, they are normally very organized people. They're very routine. They're very structured in their methodology. They have systems in place. They have strategies in place. And before they turn up to school in the morning, in their mind, they have a very, very clear picture of how the day is going to unfold, what they're going to be doing. And anything that happens to unsettle that is a serious challenge to them, because it will raise all sorts of questions. If you can imagine a child going into school, let's say a primary school, and they are expecting that for the first period of learning during the day, they're going to be doing mathematics. And the teacher is there in the room and says, good morning to everybody. Today is going to be really exciting. Rather than doing maths, we're going to go down to the local supermarket and do a survey on what people are choosing. Isn't that exciting? And the teacher's enthusiasm will come over. I've arranged this, it's great fun, we're going to be doing something, it's out of the classroom. And the defender will be going, oh no, you can't do this. When are we leaving? How are we getting there? What shoes should we be wearing? Is it raining? Do I need a coat? Are we coming back in time for lunch? All these questions will bombard their mind, because it is totally upsetting their understanding of the way the day was going to progress. And so early consultation with the defender is really important. Even just meeting them at the beginning of the day and saying, are you happy with what's happening? Do you know what's going to be happening today? Have you got any worries, any concerns about the day? Simple little questions like that will make them feel very, very much at ease. So communication is absolutely core for the defender.
Thank you, Mark. And especially now with all the change and uncertainty, children with high defender will be finding it particularly challenging. And so supporting them at home, helping them have more of a structure in place and helping them feel secure is going to be really important from a parental point of view.
Absolutely, absolutely. And without having that discussion for them around how the day is going to shape up, talking to them about the day before about what's going to happen tomorrow, that will just ease their minds to such a huge, huge degree.
Yeah. And so next we've got the friend.
The friend, but just one more thing about the defender. Interestingly, the younger the age group, the stronger the defender is, or the more defenders you find in that age group. And interestingly, from a staffing point of view, the more you find staff have the defender in the profile for very sort of early years education, etc. And that early years education is highly structured and highly routine. And of course, the staff are highly structured and highly routine. So you are going to find defenders working in nurseries and early years education. Thanks. Sorry, Carol. The friend. This overall in education, whether we're looking at primary or secondary education, whether we're looking at children of 9, 10, 11, 14, 16, is almost a primary motivator throughout. It's one of the top 3. And I find that a little bit concerning. The friend needs to feel that they belong. They need to feel as though they are part of something, and they need to be supported and supportive. But within that, whilst the friend has very, very high levels of social and emotional intelligence, very, very often that social and emotional intelligence is being applied to their relationships with other people. And I say that and want to put great emphasis on it, because it's not necessarily applied to the extension of their learning in terms of their knowledge and their skills. It is purely about their social interactions. And because they need to belong, they want to be liked. And part of that liking means that they will go to the nth degree in order to try and avoid confrontation, and will become very, very concerned when confrontation is taking place, and it will impact on their ability to achieve anything else. So if for any reason they are unsettled, we need to sort it out, because if they're unsettled, they are not going to learn, they're not going to progress, they're not going to grow. And part of the friend is about being liked and supporting others. And for this reason, they can be or find it very, very difficult to say no to others. They can be easily led. They are subject to the whims of others and find it very, very distressing when, if for any reason, they fall out of favor And one of the things that concerns me more broadly in this world of social media is that when we have cohorts of students with the friend as a top motivator, that is being met not through the school or the learning environment, but in a large case through social media. And that is more so with the girls than the boys. The boys tend to move towards the group culture and exhibiting more behavioral disruption, whereas the girls tend to more focus on the social media, and we know the damage that that can do. And so one of the things within this is that it's indicative that the self-efficacy and the self-esteem of students is being drawn from the social media bubble rather than through the learning and self-enhancement process. We need to be very tuned into that and very, very aware of that. So the friend is almost one of the highest motivators across the youth maps. And when we link that to another motivator that I'm going to talk about at a later point, the expert, the implication is that they use their expertise to enhance the relationships that they have with others. And that can be dangerous because it is at the whim of other people rather than them actually wanting it for themselves or for the benefit or the growth of the individual. Are we all right there, Carol?
We're perfect. And I know in the next webinar, you're going to talk about the combinations of the motivators. And I'm also mindful that people might have questions. So if you want to post questions in the chat box, we'll do a question and answer session at the very end of this. But I'm conscious of time for some people. So if we move on to the next motivator, Mark, can you talk to us about the STAR?
Yeah, the STAR is the only motivator out of the 9 that can be vaguely schizophrenic by nature. It is the motivator that can be either intrinsic or extrinsic. The intrinsic motivator is very much when it's about self-protection, it's about self-questioning in order to help us achieve things. What's happening? When's it happening? How's it happening? What do I need to do? How will I know when I get it right? About understanding what's going on. The extrinsic STAR is more related to putting the spotlight on someone. It's about a claim, it's about the status, and it's about knowing that you are more important than someone else. Interestingly, where we look at the extrinsic STAR, it can tend to be very black and white in its thinking. And so therefore, what I mean by black and white, they don't like extended discussions, they don't like group chat or anything like that. It's what are we doing? What benefits is it going to bring me? Right, I'm going to do it. And so they move very quickly from concept to completion. And because for the extrinsic STAR, it is the spotlight, it is the reward, it's the acclaim and the esteem that they're after, they are likely to break every rule in the book to get to the end point as quickly as they possibly can to achieve the rewards and the esteem. And so when working with the STARs, we've got to be clear with them that there are points where we're going to check. There are stepping stones where they're going to be monitored in order to make sure that processes are being followed accurately and in detail. A STAR will twist things, they will break the rules if it's going to lift them to the top. Okay?
I think that sounds quite interesting in terms of us understanding that. Could you give us an example of a child with high star and how we might experience that?
I'll give you a very clear example of it. In a sporting activity, if it is a cross-country run and it's around a circuit, a star will try and, I've actually seen it happen, a star will try and hide whilst the others are all running around, and then they'll join at the front just before the end. From a academic point of view, they will try and get the answer from someone else. And if we're looking mathematically, what is important to them is the answer right? Therefore I get the reward, not have I shown out how I arrived at that answer. And so if they can crib the answer from someone else, they will.
Okay.
They will find the shortest possible route to the end point that they can.
Thank you, Mark. And I'm sure that's brought it to life a bit for people to understand and probably imagine. And I think useful for teachers to know, if there are any teachers on the call, to start noticing those people that with star, whether it's intrinsic or extrinsic. So now we're going to move on to the achievement motivators. And the first one's the director.
Again, a fascinating one, fairly low in education at whatever age group we're looking at. The director, basically, if someone has this towards the top of their profile, they want to be able to display leadership qualities. They want to be able to be in control. They want to be able to allocate time, resources, people. Even as a child, they will do that. You can see them in the early years where a new student comes into the tutor group or the form, and the director of the class will be the one who is telling them where to hang their coat, where to put their shoes, where to stand in the line, where to do this, where to do that. They will be the ones who are telling them where they have to put things away and how they have to put things away. They will be the ones on the playground who are organizing the games, who are organizing the activities. In older students, they will be the ones who are organizing the weekends away, the parties, that type of thing. So there is this element of control of it. But the interesting thing is that they like organizing it, but they don't actually like doing it. And so to them, the organization of it is to take control of it, to be responsible for it, to hold people accountable for it, but actually to get others to do it. And whilst this is a very low motivator overall in education, I would argue that it needs to be higher, because we need these students, particularly now in the modern era in which we're living and for the future that we're going to be facing, where a job is not for life, where more responsibility is going to be placed on the learner rather than the teacher. They are going to have a clearer sense of what they want to achieve, and they're going to need to exercise the director over themselves to help them achieve it. And interestingly, a recent survey in the UK of 17 and 18-year-olds, it emerged that they wanted government institutions, local authorities, and the police, etc., to have more control over their lives. What they wanted was to be given a standard of life, and in return, to give away their levels of autonomy. And I don't think that's going to happen. And so they've got to start taking a level of control over their lives, because this is about achieving the strategic direction that we need to achieve that I spoke about in the beginning. And so they're not looking for acclaim necessarily, but they are in a sense looking for power. And your director, you'll see them, they're the ones who will tell others who they may or may not be friendly with. You'll see it on the internet, you'll see it in the playground, you'll see it on the sports field, all those things. Okay. The builder. Not that common in children for obvious reasons, because in essence it's about money, it's about our quality of life, it's about our materialistic possessions. However, there are students who do have the builder high in the profile, and very, very often they're the ones who do not have rather than who do have. And they will see and be aware of what others have and their need to gain the approval of others through having the latest shoes, the latest iPhone, the latest this, the latest coat, the latest bag, the latest, and that is what draws the attention to them and makes them part of that sense of belonging through the friend. And so it is there in education, but almost as a codicil or an underlying support to gaining that friendship and that sense of belonging and being part of something. I have seen one student who was absolutely superb. And when the school closed its canteen, he moved in and he set up his own shop. He knew exactly what he was doing and what he was going to achieve. And his top motivator was the builder. There was an opportunity. He could increase his standard of living. He could show that he was making money. He was getting the rewards. And he knew he was setting himself targets. And he almost set up mini distribution areas as well. And so that competitive nature was very, very strong within him. And we shouldn't knock this down in schools. These are often the people who are going to be entrepreneurial, because these are the ones who want to have a quality of life and want to achieve something. All right. I think this is my favorite motivator, the expert. And just for a moment, I would like to give a warning, and that is, please do not confuse the expert with the star. The expert needs mastery of whatever it is they choose to do. They want to be the best that they can be at whatever they do, but they are not doing it for acclaim. They are doing it because they need to feel that they have attained and achieved, and that they have reached a point not of competence, but of mastery and expertise. And so because of this, the expert is very much based in the present and the future. They think about what they're doing now, they think about the aspect of it. And the future side of it is always that question around, how do I make it better? If we are looking to improve upon the quality of our performance, it means that by nature, we are very self-critical and self-judgmental in terms of what we have done in the past, because it's upon that that we wish to build improvement. And so the expert can find that criticism from another is very, very difficult. So rather than say to an expert, well, that didn't go very well, did it? What we need to do is to ask them, what are your thoughts on how that went? What would you do differently next time? And what do you need to be able to improve upon it? They love sharing their knowledge, but only when they want to. We can't force them to do that. And we shouldn't put them on a pedestal, because experts are so highly self-critical that they do not want to be shown to be the best at whatever they do. One of the things with experts is they often need to be told it is time to move on to the next thing, time to do something else, but what they're doing is as good as it's going to get. And they can also find time management really difficult, because their sense of curiosity leads them to believe and to say that they will do more than they actually have physical time, effort, and energy to achieve. So we need to monitor their workload really, really carefully.
Thank you, Mark. And I think that's a good watch out for any parents listening who've probably got expert children. And again,
Absolutely.
I'm so absorbed in the subject they're learning that it can take too long, and then they run out of time for their homework. And also thinking about working from home right now. And if you feel that your child has strong expert motivator, is actually helping them to understand when enough's enough, rather than trying for things to be perfect.
The other thing we've absolutely got to give them, Carol, is time to think. The expert does not move rapidly towards something. They need to amass all the details. They need to know what it looked like 10 years ago, what it looked like 5 years ago, before they can start doing anything with it now. So they need to gather information. They need facts, they need evidence, and then they can start to build on that.
Yeah. And so thinking about the expert and being more in the here and now and gathering the facts and evidence, we then move on to the growth motivators. And the first one we're talking about is the creator, Mark.
As the image indicates here, the creators can be very, very messy people. They're highly inventive, highly intuitive, bigger picture thinkers, and move rapidly from concept to completion. But often they forget to tell anybody else what they're doing, why they're doing it, how it works, etc. They can get totally lost in their own world and create a huge amount of chaos around them. These are the world's problem solvers and inventors. They like to bring new things into being. They're very good at working independently, and love challenges and variety. And this is why they will play with several different things at once. But if they hit a block with something, they will move off onto another thing. And whilst they're doing the other thing, their mind is still focusing on what happened or what they haven't yet finished in order to be able to unblock it. And so we've got to be very, very careful about expecting them to be hugely routined and structured, because if we make them put it away physically, they're going to put it away mentally. They need high levels of stimulation, not only in terms of the challenge and the task and the speed at which it's done, but they need that level of stimulation as well in terms of the environment in which they function. They need a nice, bright environment. They need plants. They need to be able to see things. They don't like being isolated. They need natural light. And so where we're asking them to do their work and their assignments is really, really important. Having created something, having done something, having achieved something, it is important that they are able to put their name on it. Not in terms of a claim or anything like that, but it is about recognition of their creativity. And so therefore, if a young student decides that they're going to write a play, it's actually really quite important that they see it as a book with a title and with their name on the cover, because this is what they have created more than anything else. It's not about their level of stardom or anything like that. They really don't like going over ground that they've already been over. They need new challenges, rapid changes in activity. I would not be asking the creator to focus on anything for anything more than 20 minutes, maximum. They can come back to it if they need to, but don't expect them to work for hours on something. They just can't do it. They'll be off. They'll be ripping the garden up if you ask them to do that.
Again, I think that's really helpful for parents with children with high creator motivator, is knowing that they need that constant stimulation. I'm sure if your child does have the high creator, you'll know it anyway, but allowing them that opportunity to move between tasks, but equally to move back, I think is really important. Yeah.
Can I give you one example here of the most brilliant thing? A colleague of mine has two very creative children. They are creative. And they're quite musical as well. And of course, creativity in music. And in this particular case, they picked on a piece of music, which you may not know out there, but it's a piece of music, I think it's called Swinging Safari, which is a very sort of Caribbean type music. And it's used as the introductory music for the cricket's test match special in this country, for the commentary on a cricket test match. And it's a very great piece of music, the steel drums and so on. And it's fairly short, it's only about 2 minutes long. But the challenge was for the children to transpose this piece of music into a format that they understood, although they cannot write music. And so they had to look at tempo, beat, rhythm, rhyme, all these types of things. And then it was to go into the kitchen and recreate that music using only what they could find in the kitchen. And so they were having to make whistles out of cannellini. But to make, and so there was science involved in it, there was mathematics. And in terms of the transposing of the music, they were using superlatives, diminutives, all the right language, terminology, etc. As an activity like that, hugely inspiring, but a great amount of learning underpinning it. And so with creators, think about the activity rather than the written and the driven exercise.
Thank you, Mark. That's a great example. And we've got two more to go through. So let's talk about the spirit. Parents might be struggling with spirits right now.
The spirit will never sit still, and becomes very, very easily bored, particularly by long explanations. So for those of you who are sitting there listening to this, if you haven't walked away, you're probably not a spirit. They need high levels of independence. In other words, they need to be able to decide what they're going to do, when they're going to do it, how they're going to do it, who, if anybody, they're going to do it with, what they want by way of an outcome. If we hand them all these instructions, they've instantly lost interest in it. And so if we think about a learning environment, a subject like English, and you say, right, now we're going to need you to do a bit of comprehension, a bit of reading and understanding and answering questions. Read the passage, there's the process. Look at the questions, read the questions, great. Go back to the passage, read the questions a second time. Now answer the questions, starting at question 1, starting at question 2, starting at question 3. With the spirit, I would give them that bit of reading comprehension, say, I'd like you to read this. And what I want you to know, or what I would like you to think about whilst you're reading this, what questions haven't been asked? Why are they important questions that haven't been asked? And what do you think the answers would be? And so you're setting them a challenge that lies outside the normal process. And because they're not following the set procedure and the set pattern, we're actually raising their natural levels of curiosity and stimulation. And they will outperform on that because they're managing it themselves rather than having us tell them what to do. The only things we've got to do with the spirit is agree an objective and agree a time frame for them. And if we can get them to set that time frame, they'll be far better performers than we can ever impose on them. All right, Carol? So they need to be autonomous. We need to give them as much freedom as we can. We need to let them make their own decisions. They love choices. If we don't give them a choice, they're not interested. And then if we give them choice A, B, and C, and then ask the question, which do you think is the better? Why do you think that? And then cut them loose and let them get on with it. High levels of stimulation are really, really important in spirit. They have got probably a shorter concentration span than the creator, but a desire to bring greater benefit as a result of it.
And so if you have children at home who have high spirit, give clear expectations about and give them some boundaries around what they need to do, but then give them the freedom within that, Mark, isn't it?
Yeah.
To then do it in their way. Ask them open questions, be very empowering in the way that you speak with them and deal with them. If you try
you've got to treat them as adults. You've got to treat them as adults, even if they're 9, 8, 7 years old.
Yeah. Otherwise,
talk to them as though they're an adult.
Achieve things. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then last but not least, the searcher.
This is one of the lowest motivators in education. And for even those who have it as a high motivator in education, do not recognize that the need is being met. The searcher needs to know that in all they do, they're making a difference, that they're making a positive contribution to someone or to something. And if they cannot see the benefit of what they're doing, then they'd rather not do it. If there is no beneficial outcome for someone or something, then why are we doing it? So the context is really important for the searcher. How is this going to help them in the future? How is it going to help them achieve what they need to achieve in terms of their long-term goals? One of the greatest things you could do for a searcher is to give them a mentor from outside the family, someone that they can turn to and talk to, someone to help keep them strategically placed and working towards something. For the searcher, they really need effective feedback in terms of the quality of what they've done and how it's had an impact and how it's brought benefit. Rewards are not important for them necessarily. They need to just understand that they are making that difference. And if we combine, I'm going to digress for just a little bit, if we combine the searcher, which is a fairly low motivator for most in education, with the friend, which is a high motivator in education for most students, what that begins to tell us is the meaning for most students is in the quality of the relationships that they have with others. It's not around their learning. And we've got to draw them back into the use of the expert and the director that's going to help them achieve their strategic direction, and the self that's going to create the awareness through the spirit of who they are and what they want. Carol, I'm going to stop for a moment, if that's all right. You're on mute, Carol.
Yeah. So thank you, Mark. So you've given us a very nice explanation of each of these 9 motivators. I know people listening to this could be parents, could be teachers or coaches and mentors who want to support young people, especially at this time right now. And what I'd like to do is give you a big thank you for sharing your time, but then opening up the floor for anyone, if you want to unmute your microphone, anyone that's got any questions for Mark. I mean, there are going to be 2 more webinars. So the next webinar will talk about the combinations of motivators and how that might influence in slightly different way the blends of these motivators. But for now, just focusing on these 9 motivators, you might have a young person in your household right now that Mark might be able to help you with. So anybody with any questions, we're opening up the floor.
I've seen one chat
Christina.
come up.
Christina has a question.
Is there a connection between the list of motivators and further career or study paths? So helping young people with their careers, Mark?
Yes, there is. But in terms of, is there a tick sheet that you can go, this is their top motivator, they should do this? No, there isn't. One of the benefits of the motivational map is the discussion that comes out of it with the person who has completed the motivational map. However, we can bring certain things to the fore. So, for example, if someone has the spirit and creator in the profile, then we might be looking at a career that offers them a foundation for something more entrepreneurial in the future, where they have high levels of freedom and independence, the ability to decide what they're going to do. However, the danger with that is once we set up the business, we actually become so bogged down in managing the business that we forget why we've originally set it up. Equally, if we've got people with high relationship-based motivators in the profile, then we need a sort of career that's going to lead them to high levels of interaction on a one-to-one level or a group or a team level with other people. So we might be looking at possibly a teacher, a civil servant, someone working in healthcare or pastoral work, psychology, all those types of things. So the map opens up the questions around the route and the possibilities of the route. It doesn't tell you what they have to do.
Thank you, Mark. And we've also got one from Gabriella. How can changes with everything online now and its impact long term actually affect education with learners who are accustomed to low responsibility, and they're used to control from the teachers and control from their institutions? So how are these changes now, do you think?
A very, very astute question. I think I've hinted at it as we've been speaking this evening, in that it's bringing to the fore an awareness that the young people of today have to take a greater responsibility for their own learning. And what the motivational map does is create an awareness of what is important to them and why it is important to them. And therefore, they will have, as a result of that, the ability to influence not only the style, but the progression of their learning in order to help them achieve whatever it is they may wish to achieve as a jumping off point for a career. I think the motivational map helps us to explain why it is important they've got to start taking more responsibility for themselves and have a greater awareness of themselves that allows them a higher level of control over their future. And so this is about not having something done to you, it is about doing something for yourself.
And I think this is a very timely tool now for young people and for parents, in that even when things change back, they're not going to be the same again. I think we're all going through this experience, and actually if we can support our children and young people to take more personal responsibility during this big change that's happening to everybody, we're actually setting them stepping stones for their future success, whatever that might look like ahead. So I think this is helping to skill people up right now so that they're going to be more prepared to navigate their future.
And I think with that, Carol, as well, when a student does a motivational map now, if their circumstances change in 6 months, a year, 2 years, it doesn't mean that the plan can't change. It might mean that our motivators are slightly different and therefore we need to replan and reconfigure. But it does mean that once we've started putting strategies into place for these students, we can monitor the development of those strategies through asking them to do another map at a later point, and then revisiting and checking on the progress that is being made. This is this whole thing about students having a coach and a mentor who's going to support them, but not do it for them.
Thank you very much. Well, I would like to thank everybody for their time and coming to the webinar. If you do have any further questions, then please send them by email to Judith Abri or to myself, and we'll forward them on to Mark if we can't help and answer them.